Welcome to another episode of Justice, a lawyer's hangout where we simplify the law and explain how it affects your everyday life. Today's topic is both sensitive and very important. Understanding money laundering in Nigeria, how it works, why it matters, and what the law says. We'll break down how money laundering works, why the government is tightening regulations, and what the law says about financial transactions, banks, fintechs, business owners, and your rights. To discuss this, we have our legal experts, Fortune Toma and Juliet Odo. Welcome, counsel, to this episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, Mr. Toma, in simple Nigerian term, what exactly is money laundering?
Yes, money laundering.
Yes.
You know, I don't think there's any politician that's arrested by the EFCC that we don't hear on charges of money laundering, corruption, yada yada yada. It's usually money laundering. So it seems like a big word, but let's look at it from a very contextual point of view.
Okay.
You have money and you have laundering, and we launder our clothes.
Okay.
What's the definition of laundering? To make what is dirty
Clean.
chicken. So money laundering, it is simply cleaning dirty money.
Even his explanation, me. So money laundering is making dirty money clean. Good.
So,
Mrs.
we'll go into the specifics of that much later.
Okay, Mrs. Juliet, what kinds of money are considered proceeds of crime? Like you said, dirty money. So I can presume crime is part of it.
Yeah.
Of course.
What kinds of money can be considered in that
So
category?
from dirty
Okay.
deals like cyber crime,
Okay.
terrorism, when you're financing terrorism,
Okay.
right? And then corruption.
Okay.
Corruption. You have stolen money, so you transfer it into something else, or you paint a picture like it is clean, so it now looks clean money, but it's actually dirty.
I need more on that list. Mr. Toma, can you add more to the list?
So there's a lot of things. Terrorism. Banditry is a hot topic now.
Okay.
And you know it's
Kidnapping.
It's essentially kidnapping. Yes,
Yeah.
banditry is essentially kidnapping. So and she's mentioned corruption. All forms of illegal, if it is considered an illegal
That's an illegal
transaction,
money.
yes,
It falls under that
the category of
Okay, so Mr. Toma, what major changes did the 2022 money laundering law bring, and why did the government feel the need to tighten their rules?
Okay, so I think quite a number of changes. Yes, the Anti-Money Laundering Act. The most critical one was the effort by the federal government to try as much as possible as to reduce the cash flow, within the country. So there are now cash limits on how much you can withdraw from your bank, how much cash you are even allowed to move around with, across airports, both in naira and foreign currency. There are also some other restrictions that are placed that the new Anti-Money Laundering Act has brought on board. The way money laundering works is you obtain illegal money from whatever source, kidnapping, terrorism, whatever source, looting. You first of all place it into the financial system. So you literally have washing machines, for example, laundromats, who exist to clean money. They exist as shell corporations. You just see them have several branches.
Yeah.
So I use that example because it's very key. When by the time money is placed into the system, it now moves through the banks, and you try to move it around.
Yeah. Are you sure that's not part of the reasons why banks imposed very strict KYC compliance?
Yes, that's a CBN. And kudos to the CBN.
Yeah,
the CBN,
know your customers.
Yes, the
KYC.
CBN has mandated that banks institutionalized very strong KYC requirements, even information around sources of certain thresholds of income.
Yeah.
So if your account is usually used to taking small amounts of money, and then all of a sudden there's a big. I know there was a time several years a while ago that there was some money came into my Kuda bank account, and my account was locked just because that kind of money hasn't.
I'd never entered.
And it's not so big. I just don't, because it's a microfinance bank. I just don't use the bank for, large transactions. But that time I needed to just use it and say, okay, let me use it. And then as I transferred money from one of my other accounts, the same name, into my Kuda account, my account was first of all frozen. So those are some of the steps the banks are taking to ensure that money laundering is curbed in Nigeria.
Okay, Mrs. Juliet, why do banks ask plenty questions like your transfers? They want to know the kind of money you're receiving, the source, your ID card. They'll tell you to come and update this, your BVN, what you do, and why do you think that accounts get frozen suddenly?
Okay, so the new method of the rigorous requirements that you need to fulfill, we can also align it to some of the panels.
Okay.
So you see, that's why the regulation is being tightened up by the banks.
Okay. You just the next question you just gave an answer, but I would love you to throw a bit of light. So now, what responsibilities do regular? So, this for you. What responsibilities do regular business owners now have under the law, clearly stated?
So I think the responsibility can be summarized, one sentence: the obligation to do honest business.
Okay.
And do not make yourself a vessel of, any sort of money laundering.
Okay.
So report suspicious activity.
Right.
Do not be very given to offers, because there will be offers. You're a car dealer, for example. There's a reason why some of those categories of businesses were listed. You're a car dealer, and you deal in purchasing cars, several loads of money. A politician has stolen money, or a Yahoo boy has stolen money, and he wants to clean it. He comes to you and says, "Oh, I have £1 billion." Okay, and he says, "Okay, I'll bring it into my system. I'll just purchase new cars, come sell, and then the money's in the banks. I've cleaned it. I give you back the money some way." So you have an obligation as a business to do honest business. Don't take sorts of suspicious money, and then report where you feel like there's fraudulent activity. Someone comes to buy a car from you, he pays with an account number, and then he comes back, he's asking for a refund, that something is bad with the car, and he's asking you to send to another
account number.
That's suspicious activity.
Okay.
Then, of course, like what's on the bank's KYC requirements, you have to know your customer. So obtain important data about your customer before you do business with them. I think this, and I've not added the part that you should have a lawyer.
Yes, have a lawyer in case issues come. Which issues
must come?
Yes, they must come. So have a lawyer at your beck and call. Okay, for the sake of emphasis, Mr. Toma has said that as a business owner, you have certain responsibilities, one of which is that you must verify your customers. KYC is very important. So when you see banks doing all of this, do not complain. It is very necessary. Also, you must report suspicious transactions. You must also keep records, avoid large cash deals, and you must cooperate with regulators. And like you mentioned, get a lawyer. So let's take a quick break. When we return, we will discuss why proving money laundering is difficult, how effective agencies are, the rise of crypto and fintech, and how to balance enforcement with fundamental rights. Stay tuned.
Camera rolling. Light set. Sound check. And action.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's program, a program where we get to talk about the daily lawyers around legal issues with intent to educate.
This is the perfect space to create professional quality videos, recording news, podcasts, and all media content. With top-of-the-line cameras, studio lighting, soundproof spaces, we provide everything you need for a seamless shoot. Our fully equipped studio ensures high-quality production every time. Enjoy a comfortable, air-conditioned environment with professional-grade gear and expert support. Contact us now or visit our Abuja location to reserve your spot.
Welcome back to Justice, a lawyer's hangout. Before the break, we explored how the law treats suspicious transactions and the responsibilities of everyday business owners. Now, let's push deeper into enforcement challenges, crypto risk, and how Nigeria can fight financial crime without violating citizens' rights. So let's get back into our conversation. Mrs. Juliet, why is it hard for EFCC and other agencies to prove money laundering cases in court, especially when most transactions in Nigeria are done in cash?
Yes, in cash, it's even a bit easier to prove in
cash.
Yes, because,
really?
Yes, because when you move cash, where are you moving it to? Are you CBN? Where are you moving? So I think it's when they launder this money via a car dealer, like the example he gave, and the narration is already saying he bought a car, but we know that on the background, he didn't really buy a car.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you get jewelries, or you open up a supermarket, even when nothing is selling there. So it's difficult to prove because of how to, there's no track straight way.
But do people really move with cash? Because even if somebody is giving you cash of, let's say, 100 million, is it possible? I think there are a lot of checkmates that CBN has done, because I didn't you still take it to the bank.
You can. So it's all a question of perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and threshold. I mean, if it's a cash threshold that is not difficult to move, especially when it's in FX, you can move it around. But in terms of if it's a question of what can you easily trace, cash may not be as traceable as something that would leave a digital footprint. And when 2025, you know, ecosystems have evolved. It's technology. We're talking GovTech every day, digital tech, public tech, and the CBN is there to enforce it. Look at how the rise of a lot of microfinance banks and then payment service providers, the Kodas, the OPays, the Money Points. You see how well they're doing with a digital footprint. So when there's a digital footprint, it is difficult
to prove.
No, it is actually more
easier to trace.
To trace. So I think if I'm going to contribute to anything, I would say that one way is to try to enforce the no cash policy.
No cash policy.
You understand? There are barriers, because even digitally, crypto platforms, you can launder money through P2P, peer-to-peer tradings, and some other, as much as the CBN has tried to regulate it and checkmate it. So there will always be loops. Even within the banking system, a lot of large money laundering deals are happening, you know, with the collaboration of big branch managers and senior bank executives. They are the ones in the system, so they know the loopholes. So I think if it's a question of, in our society where cash is still a thing, you know, how can the EFCC or some of these agencies curb money laundering? I think the focus should be on how can we reduce that cashless society. Okay. Let there be a digital footprint, and it's one of the ways to reduce or to at least trace. Once there's a trace, you know,
to be easier to prove in court.
It becomes easy to prove.
Okay, so we have Ms. Julius, we have agencies like the EFCC, there is NFIU, there is ICPC. How effective do you think these agencies have been in investigating and prosecuting money laundering cases?
Yes, I would say they're doing their very best, but their best is not
good enough.
Because most times after inviting people for investigation, you have one thing happens because someone is highly placed, and then you don't hear about that. You don't even know how the matter ended. Okay. So it's just for them to always ensure that when you arrest someone, you pursue it to its logical conclusion and let the public know that this person is guilty of this, tried, convicted, and all that, and instead of just covering up cases and then we don't know how.
But do you think, Mr. Thomas, do you think this case they stall for too long?
Yes, so I
it's
think
also part of the reason why these agencies we feel they are not effective.
So it's all also a question of certain institutional challenges within each of the institutions. First of all, there's political interference. Okay. If the president who appoints you as the chairman of the ICPC tells you to take your hands off maybe an investigation or pause it, what would you do? In reality, wouldn't you pause it? That's the man who gave you your job. So and that's what the constitution provides. I mean, as a matter of fact, the constitution recognizes that man who gave you the job as the chief executive, and you're only acting through his powers. That's what our constitution says. So there's political interference. There are other challenges as well that may act as barriers. And that's why you see that you go to the FCC's page, you see a lot of what I like to call the low profile cases. They are putting pictures of even those who are not convicted. That is an issue in itself. Someone you're innocent until you're proven guilty.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of all these internet fraudsters, small fish, in my opinion, and they are carrying out laundering
Placards, their faces are out there.
Their faces are out there. I know that's a measure by the FCC to deter
others.
that crime, but it's also a double-edged sword, because you stand the risk of punishing someone who has done nothing. This is a real issue, because I had this case of a friend. It wasn't just a client, a friend, a few years back, who was picked up by the EFCC because he was reported by his neighbor that he lives an expensive life and he doesn't go out. Not like he does parties and all, but he drives a Mercedes Benz. He doesn't go out. He's a virtual worker.
So he was presumed to be a young boy.
Yes, and the EFCC came to pick him up. And this boy in question, his father is highly placed. It's not just so. This is not even an issue of he doesn't have connections and all. And he's a man of honest means. He's not just my client. He's a friend. You understand? He's a tech bro who's into product design and working for governments all across the world, the USA, and he's paid heavily. So you see that situation where they put up his name. Okay, he didn't have a placard, but his name was out there.
Yeah.
You understand? And those kinds of things are things that we need to try and stop. They are institutional issues ultimately. So I think for me, this is a message to the FCC. Let's see how we can, deliver more on the high-profile cases around politically exposed persons, because you see crazy numbers, crazy figures, But when it comes to the small fish, the Yahoo boys, they are quick.
That's where they are quick to show power and show that they are working.
Yes.
And you have to achieve an equilibrium of some sort. We know you won't catch everybody at once.
Yeah.
With finite and limited resources, there's only so much any law enforcement agency can do. Do you understand? So that's my position on the matter.
Okay, so Mrs. Juliet,
Yeah.
this current legal framework, does it adequately address money laundering risk posed by cryptocurrency and digital financial systems?
Okay, yes, I think that's even one of the major issues it's been addressing, because we can see that a lot of channels and a lot of Bitcoin transactions, Ethereum, people are holding back at it. They do it on the side, but you find out that people don't come out boldly to tell you that, they are trading crypto, because sometimes EFCC or ICPC can pounce on you. And then, of course, people who are also into illicit means of income would also use those channels to push in money, launder money, and that.
So there's still a bit of a challenge. So what it means is that this current act did not address that part, because there's still a lot of
So I think it's more an implementation issue.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not.
So it is possible.
And there are regulations. The CBN, the Act, I think the Anti-Money Laundering Act created, gave backing of law to virtual assets, the cryptocurrencies and what have you. And the CBN and the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and the SEC are the regulatory bodies that are in charge of regulating. They have specific rules. So, and I think they've even issued guidelines,
Okay.
And with the SEC, there's also a new Investment and Securities Act that has given the Securities and Exchange Commission more regulatory clarity on how it should regulate virtual assets, cryptocurrencies. So it's more an implementation issue. But there's surely progress. We were not where we were yesterday on
So
this matter.
they need to do more
They need
with
to do
regards to the fintech
implementation,
companies
yes.
and all of that. Okay, so moving on. How can Nigeria fight money laundering without abusing people's rights, like freezing of accounts without warning or invading of their privacy? Because, like you mentioned, you had someone who was reported, and then the first thing, I think I've also seen it online, the first thing you see them doing is telling you to hold a placard, to put your name out there, put an offense there. And the law is clear. A person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. So what do you think they can do with regards to that, Mr. Toma?
Okay, so I think if we work with the principle that two wrongs will never make a right,
Okay.
everything becomes easy.
Okay.
So you think this guy, and you have reasonable like grounds to believe that this guy is, a fraudulent person on whatever basis, whether it's a kidnapper, a terrorist, someone who bribes, or just a vessel for money laundering, a businessman who's a vessel for money laundering. Whatever your thoughts, there is an obligation on you to not join in by committing another wrong and not following due process.
Okay.
So there's always due process. The law recognizes these things, and it's very easy to protect the rights. It should be a balancing act. You want to freeze someone's account and you do not obtain a court order, and then on the basis of the fact that you are the regulator, you now presume to be beholding of powers that you are a lord unto yourself. You understand? That is wrong. And we see that among a lot of government parastatals. When there's it boils down to the question of obedience to the rule of law. When you create the impression that a system or a society or certain individuals within a society are above the law, there becomes chaos naturally. You have challenges, you have people who would always fight the system. So I think it ultimately boils down to one thing: following due process.
Okay.
So it cuts across. So following due process, presume that this man is innocent until he's proven guilty, and act accordingly. Okay. Section 36 of the Constitution is clear.
Okay, and there's this popular saying that in a disorderly and lawless society, life is brutish, nasty, and short. So would plead that these agencies follow due process. Okay, now, and Miss Juliet, now there's this category of persons that eventually, from the scenario he gave us, it was reported, it was busted, and then all of those things happened. What do you think he can do? Because if after investigation is proven to be innocent, that's a breach of his fundamental rights. What can he do?
Yeah, it's a breach
also
of his
a breach of his privacy as well.
Privacy, fundamental rights. So he can take up an action against the security agency in court. And I believe that when Nigerians start exploring this avenue, I believe these things will also help to curb the incessant freezing of accounts or just putting up people suspects, even if you're calling them suspects.
Do you have to display them in that manner?
Social media is going viral, and the internet never forgets. And you have caused damage to that person's reputation. So I think Nigerians should.
Mr. Toma, don't you think Nigerians are scared to go after these agencies, even after their rights have been violated?
Yes, and that question now, just allows me the launchpad to mention something I was already going to contribute.
Okay.
There's also a responsibility on the government. And the government, there's three arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. And it's a whole of government approach to this issue. There's a responsibility on government. The cost of litigation, for example, is one thing that would deter many people. Okay. Let's not even consider, say, the confidence that you may not be taken or picked up
bold
again.
Enough. Okay,
yes, because there's that fear. Yes. There's the palpable fear that, let's take the police. You go and do the needful by taking it up before the court. Tomorrow they talk within themselves. It's an institution run by human beings first. They are human beings. And then some other squad comes to pick you up. So that fear of harassment is there. So the government has a responsibility to build this trust gradually. One of the ways is by creating, specialized channels for grievance remedial. So, if a citizen has to wait to consider the cost of hiring a lawyer, paying court administrative fees, and then bearing in mind the very long judicial process that may ensue, that may follow, that's enough to deter
Deter
him
them.
from taking up a case. My friend in question
The issue of confidentiality also comes up.
comes in.
because
Yes,
they're
you
scared.
also don't want to put yourself out there
At
that to
risk.
say you were arrested because of the maybe bad publicity, the notion that some may have that where there's fire,
Yeah.
there's smoke. I mean, where there's smoke, there's
There's
fire.
fire, yeah.
You know, so those are some of the barriers. There's an obligation on government. We will not achieve 100%, but you know, as a society, we must be committed to seeing how we can reduce the vices that plague us.
Okay.
And this is surely one of them.
Okay, Mrs. Juliet, are there any lessons we can draw from high-profile cases that exist in our society? Are there any at all?
The lessons that we can draw from the high profile cases is nothing other than encouraging Nigerians to ensure that they only transact, deal, be part of legitimate businesses. Just like Mr. Thomas said, just be honest in your dealings. Stay away from fraudulent transactions. Do not finance terrorism. Report any transaction that is not clear to you. Do your KYC. The KYC is not only for the banks. As a lawyer, as an owner of whatever business that you are, that you fall under, that requires the special certificates from EFCC. Just do your KYC, and then you stay out of trouble. Report suspicious and miraculous alerts.
Miraculous alert. I don't
Yeah.
get
To
that alert.
Nigerian public officials, to Nigerian public officials, don't get
Yes.
carried away.
Okay.
You know, administrations come and go, and I'm saying this for both the very high profile and middle or even low class public officials.
Okay.
Don't get carried away and forget that you know illegal activity that you are doing may eventually come out
come up
when
and
the
catch up with you.
administration changes. We
Yeah,
know
that's true.
public officials who are currently in court today. We don't need to mention names.
Deeds of
Yes,
years back.
yes, that they are still in. Some have been convicted. Some cannot step foot in this country. Some have forfeited real property assets.
And all.
You know, both tangible and intangible. The stories are replete. So don't get carried away because you know your cup may get full.
Okay, so
one day.
lastly, before we wrap up, Mr. Toma, what legislative or institutional reforms could strengthen anti-money laundering enforcement going forward?
So we've identified some of the bottlenecks,
Okay.
the institutional bottlenecks, and I always like to say that we do not have a problem of law in terms of legal regime. Perhaps, I mean, 2022 was 3 years ago, and between then and now, since the anti-money laundering was passed, we've seen some progress, we've seen some challenges, and there's room. The law evolves. There's room for change. So, in terms of giving the regulators more power to tighten the no cash policy, and they've done well because if we look at the statistics, I don't have the numbers, but you know, the amount of cash or bank transactions that have moved digital, and you will be surprised by the ratio. I don't think there's anything I do and I want to pay cash. For instance, I just pick up my phone, do a transfer, or bring out my ATM and swipe. So the any framework that gives or encourages these agencies to be able to digitize is one of such things that will, you know, encourage it. And I think the best way to look at it is the budget, the Appropriation Act. That's a legislative framework. We should curate, you know, Appropriation Act bills that will eventually become acts, budgets that provide enough funding for digital systems.
Okay.
You know, that's the ultimate thing. If we digitize, everything is traceable, it makes the job a lot more easier.
Yeah, we can also call for stronger whistleblowing protection and regulations, because if we have more whistleblowers out there, I'm sure we should be able to curb some of this money laundering.
Of course.
What's of protection of the whistleblower?
And that's why
That's where digitization comes in.
Yeah, that's what we're also calling
Because
for
if I can
protection.
pick up
Yeah,
my phone
yeah.
and I know that there's a secure back end that my
True.
information, I'm sending
Yes,
this and
I
it's
should be
completely
confident
anonymous.
enough to
You know, I just
report
blow my
such.
whistle on my phone. I don't need to go
You
anywhere. and
don't
Nobody
need to go
needs to.
anywhere. Nobody needs
Yeah.
to
Nobody
know
needs
you.
to see.
Yeah, so thank you guys.
digitization
Thank you guys
is-
for joining me on this episode, for bringing clarity to today's session. And yeah, to our viewers out there, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Justice, a Lawyer's Hangout. Money laundering affects all of us, From bank customers to business owners to fintech users, understanding the law helps you protect yourself and operate safely. Always document large transactions. Try as much as possible to avoid cash-based deals when possible. Cooperate with KYC requirements because they protect you. Seek legal advice before responding to agency invitations. We also admonish that you use regulated financial platforms only. And importantly, knowing your rights. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and remember, justice is easier when you understand the law. Remember to follow us on all our social media platforms at LJ Nigeria. Till I come your way again. Bye for now.